Hi friends, welcome to Houseplant Tips and Tricks. My name is Muffin and today we're going to talk about why I don't eat the plants.
This series is sponsored by repotme.com. Get all of your indoor gardening supplies delivered to your door from one place. Repotme.com has practically everything you need for your orchids, succulents, and houseplants, including handmade potting mixes, planters, fertilizers, and much more. Hey friends, one of the things I'm asked most often is how on earth do I have all of these plants here in my home as well as a cat?
It's because I'm so good.
I have had my cat Muffin since 2017, actually just a couple months after I started uploading on this YouTube channel, and I can say without a doubt when it comes to the way that she behaves around my plants that I am one lucky son of a bitch. I've had a lot of plants in my home since a couple years before I even got Muffin, and she has barely paid any attention to most of my plants. That is, until recently. She's discovered sometime in the last year that I don't like it when she chews on my plants. For many reasons, and that it gets my attention almost immediately. So if there is something that she wants, whether it be food or some treats, she's going to let me know by chewing on one of the plants in my general vicinity.
I just can't help it. They taste so good.
Now, I am chalking this up to learned behavior. A couple years ago, we lived with another cat that was not as well behaved as Muffin in all aspects of his life, but particularly with the plants. He would chew on plants unprovoked, or if there was something that he wanted, and he would pee in the soil of the larger plants in my home. Oh my god, are you kidding me with this little one right here? She is so freaking cute. The easiest way to combat a curious cat is to simply keep the plants somewhere that they physically cannot reach. And this is actually a lot easier than it might sound, because I know that cats are known for being able to get essentially anywhere that they set their little hearts on, but that is not always the case. The most foolproof way for me is to keep my plants inside an enclosed setting, whether that be a terrarium, a greenhouse cabinet, a glass cloche, a mini greenhouse, a plastic bag, the list goes on. These settings will not only allow you to grow quite literally any plant that you want to without having to worry about your pet or your cat getting to it, but will often provide your plants with better growing conditions inside the enclosure than they would have if they were growing outside the enclosure, as long as the lighting conditions and the ventilation is okay, when plants are grown inside these enclosures, they will often be experiencing pretty much the same conditions that they would have if they were grown inside an actual greenhouse. Another pretty obvious method is to hang your plants. Once again, there are so many different ways to go about this, with swag hooks drilled directly into the ceiling probably going to be the most common way that you're going to be recommended to go about this, or what you're going to see on social media. But you can also use things like plant or gardening brackets, tension rods, wall baskets. I know I need to water that Syndapsis. I will get around to it when I feel like it. I even have a plant hanging from the exposed ducts here in my apartment, but I'm definitely not pushing boundaries weight-wise there because I'm not entirely sure how much weight they're supposed to hold. I mean, enough weight that they can already support themselves hanging from my ceiling, so probably enough weight, but my apartment company is known for cutting corners, so better safe than sorry. I have all of my plants hanging in Macrame plant hangers to hang them in style. In fact, this one is from repotme.com, and you can find it as well as a bunch of other styles and colors available on their website. And you can use code NICK to save 10% on any potting mix from repotme.com. Have you ever heard of something so wonderful in your entire life? I didn't think so. One of my favorite ways to keep Muffin from accessing my plants is to simply completely fill a surface so she doesn't even have the option of getting to them. My living room windowsills, for example, are completely stuffed to the gills, and because of this, she has no interest in checking out those plants because she literally can't. I also do this with my bookcase, which is pretty stacked with plants, as well as some other decor items, including, yes, books, could you imagine? Leaving no room for Muffin and denying her access. I'll also use the top of taller furniture pieces, including the bookcase, as well as my greenhouse cabinet to keep some more plants out of her reach. And of course, you can just designate a room in your house as the plant room and keep all the plants in there and keep the door closed. I could imagine that this is actually the most foolproof way to keep your home completely pet friendly, but an extra room in the house is probably considered a luxury to most. I don't even really have doors here in my home, other than the door to the little room that has the toilet in it. What even is a loft apartment if there isn't zero privacy? So that is not an option for me, but if it is for you, go off, girl. My home is just essentially one big plant room, and I kind of love that. While she is decently well behaved, Muffin cannot resist thin, strappy, pointy leaves like that of a spider plant or midriums or palms. So you'll definitely find plants like that hiding in the most out of reach places here in my home, because if she finds them, she will chew on them. She can't resist. But not all plants can be kept out of reach. Well, I guess actually they can, but for me here in my home with hundreds of plants, not all plants can be kept out of reach. So I like to keep here in my home what I lovingly refer to as my sacrifice plant. Like I said, this could just be learned behavior for Muffin particularly, but Muffin, as well as the cat that we used to live with a couple years ago, they would focus their attention and take out their anger and frustration about not being in charge of their food schedule on one particular plant that was really in my path of vision in the place that I am seated most often, aka my couch. And in both cases, that plant was none other than the poor Haworthia orbifolia. Now I have to admit that it is a rather happy accident that this plant has been my sacrificial plant the last 2 times, because I never really intended it to be. But it's even more of a happy accident because Haworthia orbifolia, as well as all other Haworthias and prayer plants, are considered to be non-toxic to pets. Whether or not a plant is toxic is probably going to be one of the first things that pet owners do when they are researching a plant before or possibly after they bring it home. And for good reason, because of course we never want to harm our animals. They mean everything to us. Most toxic plants contain oxalates in their sap, which are essentially microscopic shards of glass, which, as it probably sounds, are not very good to ingest. Most often it's going to cause some gastrointestinal problems with your pets, ranging from mild to severe, of course, depending on the toxicity of the plant that's ingested. If you're finding that, similar to me, your pets are gravitating towards chewing on some plants in a particular area of your home, maybe consider changing out those plants with exclusively pet-friendly plants. And while it's very important for us as pet owners to recognize which plants are considered non-toxic, I think it's a little bit more important to understand which plants are considered fatal if ingested and should be avoided at all costs. Probably the most common one that you're going to find in most plant stores is going to be the sago palm, which is terribly misleading because true palms are actually considered non-toxic, but sago palms, which look dangerously close to palms, are actually cycads, which are extremely dangerous if ingested. And poinsettias, as well as other euphorbia plants, are considered to be very toxic as well. While not necessarily as toxic as sago palms, this one should definitely be pointed out because euphorbias are offered in so many shapes, sizes, and flavors that it's very easy for you to accidentally bring one home without even knowing. Even if these plants are kept out of reach, their fallen leaves can still contain toxins, so please just do keep that in mind. But a couple non-toxic, pet-friendly plants that have my full endorsement are the spider plant, air plants, ferns, Peperomia, Pileas, and Haworthias. Although I definitely have some videos completely devoted to pet-friendly houseplants, so if you want some more in-depth lists, be sure to go check those out. In fact, there are hundreds of options when it comes to pet-friendly houseplants, so you can still have hundreds of plants in your home and still keep it 100% pet-friendly, no problem whatsoever. Because I understand my particular cat's behavior, I don't really think twice about keeping some mild to moderately toxic plants in my home, as I know what types of plants that she's drawn towards the most, and I know to keep those plants completely out of reach. But most plants, other than my sacrificial Calathea, she won't even bat an eye towards. All cats are different though, and it's just important to understand how your cat acts around plants and to adapt to any changes as they occur over time, as I'm kind of experiencing here myself in my home. But I know it's not just about the leaves. There are definitely some cats that like to turn larger floor plants into their second litter box, or perhaps dig them up, or probably both, if that is the case. An easy, cheap, and rather unsightly fix for this is going to be tinfoil. Cats hate tinfoil, and I don't blame them. This stuff is weird. You can use crinkled up pieces of tinfoil to cover up the soil in your larger planters to scare away any kitties that at least aren't involved in any outlandish conspiracy theories. But a more sightly response to this would be to put roughly a ½ inch to 1 inch layer of decorative stones or mosses or barks to help deter your pet from turning your ficus into its second toilet. Although they might find those to be a little bit more inviting than tinfoil, so if all else fails, you always have the tinfoil. It just doesn't look that amazing as you could imagine. Of course, if this does happen to you, I would definitely consider changing out all of the soil in your planter entirely, perhaps with some fresh coconut coir-based potting soils from repotme.com that you rightfully saved 10% on when you used code NICK. Well, I could only hope so. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you to repotme.com for sponsoring this series, and of course, a big thank you to our co-host Muffin for even making today's episode possible.
Babes, it was my pleasure.
If you don't already, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at phillyfoliage. Consider liking and sharing this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day.